So here we go.
So it will just take a little while for me to make the connection and have him come through.
I'm just going to take a few minutes to get totally out of the way. And one more moment. It is mostly her wanting to fully feel our essence. We are ready. She is almost ready.
I don't say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all?
It is the beginning, is it not?
We would like to remind you of the essence of the soul.
We are appreciative of the opportunity to be of service unto you, you may ask.
We thank you for the co-creation of the interaction. Please proceed however you so desire.
Several traditions on planet Earth have a story of a human that began communicating with a guidance system that was beyond explanation. They claim that this information was given to them by a non-physical source. These were the seers, the way-showers, the enlightened ones, the renegades, the channelers, who delivered beautiful messages about the power of love, compassion, and unity. Another unifying message, delivered through several channels, is that we must open our hearts to be of true service on this planet, to go where we're guided and bloom where we're planted. Songs, jingles, and rhymes are stuck on repeat in the chaos of modern society. But what happens when we stop and we really listen? What guidance will we hear when we open our hearts to inspiration from beyond our minds? The word channeling has become a very polarized term in some traditions, and it became only connected with the dark arts. Those who were speaking or hearing the voice of anyone other than the Almighty were immediately labeled heretics.
You will be able to discover this for yourselves. But I hope to be able to show you the different levels of consciousness in which you dwell.
Channeling is the phenomenon, as I see it, whereby people open to higher information, higher level information that can be accessed through a number of different means. What I prefer is the good old-fashioned word oracle.
Channeling is a form of spirit shamanism. It's all, it is communing with the spirit. When we understand the old traditions of shamanism, it was very normal for different people in tribal culture to be the ones to bring the message, the wisdom from the ancestors, from different beings, to communicate to the tribe ways that we can progress ourselves and become much more fortified in who we are as a tribal culture.
Many people who function as channelers report the experience of receiving information from some other intelligence. And sometimes they will give this other intelligence a name, or they receive a name by which this other intelligence wishes to be known.
I'm Sheila Gillette, and I'm the direct voice channel for the group collectively known as Theo.
My name is Daryl Anka. I'm a channel for Bashar. And this is what we term the entity that I channel, which presents itself as an extraterrestrial being. And that what's happening here is a telepathic contact between him and myself that allows me to function as a channel for him, as a translation device to bring through his information to humans on Earth.
When I started channeling, it was beings that were close to us, like more spirits. But eventually it came up to be many other beings that were alive in other places, also beings that are not alive, but they were not dead neither. So that changed completely my understanding of what was channeling.
The first one that spoke through me was Orlos and said, I'm preparing you for higher teachers. And so my body was being worked on. And then when Theo came in, the Orlo says, the higher teachers are here now. When Theo first came in, I was laying down and they were so loud. And what I felt in my body as they came in the right side is, you know, like when you hit your elbow and you have that tingling sensation, it's not very comfortable. My whole upper body did that when they first came in, and it was like, oh, wow. When they came in, they said, we are 12 archangels and we can be known collectively by the name Theo. And they said, we will not identify singularly because it is not the messenger that is important, it is the message. So they've never identified who the 12 are. I have an idea, but they've not told me specifically.
When I was in a meditative state in the channeling class that I took and the connection happened between me and Bashar, that word Bashar was just there in the connection. And I think it had to happen at that moment because Bashar is an Arabic word. I found out much later because I don't speak Arabic, but it is half of my background. Bashar is a physical being, though he is evolved to the point where he's very close to becoming non-physical. But he does have some of the abilities of spirit to see into other dimensions. So he is definitely seeing multidimensionally. And that's kind of their natural state.
The question allows you to create. Be the question.
There are some of them that take a lot of energy to be channeled, but there's other beings that you can just listen to them or feel them and you understand whatever they are trying to say. So there's no even need for them to be inside you or to speak through you. You just can translate them. So there's a whole spectrum of different ways of channeling.
I am Dr. Helene Wabe, Director of Research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. The IONS Channeling Research Program was my inspiration, so I hold the big picture of the program and the principal investigator of many of the specific studies, especially around trance channeling. As a child, young child, I was really pretty sensitive. I would feel people's emotions when I walked into rooms. I would feel the energy of the room. I was really sensitive to the dark because I could feel what I thought were beings in the spaces. And it caused a little bit of anxiety for me as a child. And I never really talked to anybody about it. But as I grew older and was connecting with my mom and her side of the family, that whole awareness of this ability to experience things beyond my five senses just expanded exponentially. I think the major triggering point for me was when I was 10 years old, and she took me to my grandparents' house for what they called meetings. And there was probably like 30 people sitting around in a circle. And my uncle was at the top of that circle, and he was speaking in this completely bizarre, unique way. It was my uncle there, but it didn't look like him. His words weren't the same, his voice, mannerisms, everything was completely different. So as this young 10-year-old, it It was scary. I was nervous that whatever was in my uncle was going to jump into me and that I was going to start doing something. It was exciting too because it felt important. My uncle continued to do this trans-channeling work, and he believed he was channeling something called the universal mind.
Universal mind. Source. God. Cosmic consciousness. Humanity has named the source of all life many different things over the course of history, developing countless practices and strategies to connect with this divine source of wisdom and inspiration. Is there an ultimate energy source that everyone taps into? Like a central hub where all information flows in and out? Imagine a place where everyone, everywhere, every dimension, everything is connected to.
Many ancient cultures have at their heart the idea, the principle of there being a universal mind in which all of us participate. So for example, within Hermetic philosophy, there's frequent reference to something called nous, or an infinite or universal mind. Within Vedic philosophy, reference is made to something called Akasha, which in a Western context, the earliest such references appeared in the book Isis Unveiled, which was published in 1877 by Madame H.P. Blavatsky, a world-traveled Russian occultist and religious spiritual visionary. She wrote that there exists this ethereal substance that records and preserves for eternity all human events, all human thoughts, all human interactions. And starting at that point, that term really began to enter into our common vocabulary. It entered into Western culture.
Everything is here and now. Everything is all connected. It's not a particular place you have to go. It can be accessed from anywhere, anytime. It's just the idea that all information never goes away. It's all here and now. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot cease to exist. So if you are the frequency of a particular piece of information, that's the kind of information that will, so to speak, pop into your awareness. Because information is accessible from anywhere, anytime, any place.
The best way to describe in human knowledge is certain record keeping. It is not a library of books held somewhere, but it is information that is in the soul, that is a continuum, that is resonant in each cell of your body. So the record is held there within your being. Your human experience is the earth suit that you've chosen to navigate this planet. And so the soul enters this earth suit. It has cells, which the soul permeates all of them. And that is where the records are held, in all those cells, but more importantly, in the energy of the soul that is eternal. And speak of it as one's multidimensionality and vibrational frequency.
Your universal self cannot be found within the thinking mind. This is just meant to process, yes? To receive, process, transmit. You have learned this through the internet. Look at the way that you have expanded through your technology, yes? You used to get news maybe months, years from somebody on the other side of the world. Now you have a phone conversation with them, yes? So it is becoming more available. And so is your connection to this universal mind through your higher mind. So If you are looking for this universal mind, would you not connect with your universal self?
Channeling Bashar for so long now, almost 39 years, a lot of his philosophy, a lot of his perspective has sort of rubbed off on me. He refers to what we might call universal mind or God or goddess, all that is, as all that is. Literally, its existence itself, that is self-aware, that is intelligent, but it's intelligent on a very different level than we understand what that expression is. He basically is saying it's only one thing, and we're all a part of it, because there is nothing outside of it. But from his perspective, the one thing itself, whatever you want to call it, is beyond that. Time is a concept within it. It's not subject to time.
Many traditions and philosophies have spoken about a higher self, or oversoul. But what is it?
We have one self, which is the one with the brain that is trying to survive. That's the self with the body and the emotion. The one that we call the ego, which is I. And the higher self is actually the essence that created us, that made us be what we are today. So it's our real me. So when we talk about the higher self, it's not someone superior to you. It's basically you, the actual you, talking to one tiny side of itself that is one ego. So when you connect with your higher self, you can see things very clear because it doesn't have any time, any space. It's not limited by your ego.
I do believe in the soul. I do believe in the spirit. And to me, they're two different things. And the higher self is, to me, another term for the soul. I think they're interchangeable. When we start to wake up, those first awakened moments, we remember that there's something outside of ourselves, something bigger than ourselves. And that's how it starts as little kids, or it may happen when you're 47. It doesn't matter the age, it's going to happen. But that's the first sensation you get, that there is a higher self, a soul. And it's driving you, it's animating you, it's directing you. And so the recognition of that is really important. It's the first step to waking up.
In order for us to understand the higher self from the perspective of how we look at things shamanically, the best way that we could say it is that when people talk about the shadow self, that's the higher self. The higher self isn't this illuminated being that's just sitting there going, oh. The higher self is the part of your spiritual essence that is so liberated that it is there to show you where you are not seeking for liberation.
Your true nature is non-physical. We'll say spirit if you wish to use that word. You are all in spirit right now. That's your natural state. You never leave it. In a sense, you are only dreaming that you've left. That's what physical reality is. So the so-called higher mind is actually where most of you actually resides, as a consciousness, as a greater being. The idea of your physical mind is an extension and not a large percentage of your total being.
Humans separate themselves where there's no separation. The higher self, the oversoul, is all a part of your human experience. The higher self is the sum total of all your soul, the vibrational frequency that is your soul, that has all that information, as you speak of the Akashic records. It has all the information. It's your higher power, you might say.
Edgar Cayce, the early 20th century medical clairvoyant, gave us our portrait of what we see when we think of channeling. He would relax and go into a sleep-like state or a trance state. He would receive information from an extra-physical entity that he referred to as the source.
When this started happening with me, this voice was coming out of me, then I started trying to find something or someone that I could relate my experience to understand it more. So the first book that I ever found was an Edgar Cayce book. And I started reading it and I thought, well, that's what I'm doing. You know, that's what's happening to me.
Edgar Cayce was an influential source for me, and I would almost call his style more of a trance because he was known as the sleeping prophet. So he was an influence in the sense of he was part of my education of what channeling was.
Edgar Cayce, his soul or his messenger connected to the individual. It was like the highway to them on a vibrational frequency.
Is there a vibrational highway system that can only be accessed within us, that allows us to connect to anyone, anywhere, anytime, instantaneously? Our minds can be highly influenced by outside vibrational forces. But as we have learned from most masters that have walked this planet before us, presence, practice, and patience is a prerequisite to a powerful connection. But what and who are we connecting to?
We are still taking just a moment here to settle in.
Now, I suppose a question that we face is whether, in fact, we are communicating with energies that exist outside of the individual.
That we do not intervene or interfere in certain aspects of other civilizations.
Or whether the individual is personifying some aspect of his or her own greater psyche.
When I channel, I try not to get too attached to the idea that it is a certain being or consciousness, even if I am calling upon whatever it is, a Pleiadian or an angel. It's all from this bank of greater awareness, right? And it's all of vibration and resonance and reflection of truth. Whatever comes in is in enough resonance with your field, and it exists for you to expand through. That's what I love about channeling, is that it's felt and it hits. And it's so unique because it's not coming from this linear information back and forth. There's an actual transmission happening.
I know the word channeling can be somewhat polarizing, but it is somewhat representative of what you're doing. You're acting as a conduit, you're acting as a channel to bring through information, let's say from a higher level or from more connections going on within the brain, because when you are in that state, your brain is sort of processing information in a very hyper fast way. It's making connections it doesn't normally make. It's a very clear way of seeing things and connecting things together. Everyone can do this. Everyone does do this.
We all channel energy. We're channeling that energy all the time. You know, someone who's an artist, a painter, is a channeler. A musician is a channeler. A writer is a channeler. A clairvoyant is a channeler. It's just how they receive information and bring it out.
As soon as anyone gets into a state where they're completely absorbed, they are in a channeling state.
You are not as isolated as you may think.
A lot of people think of, I want to be a channel, don't realize they are already in whatever gifts that they have that they're bringing forth to the world.
Words like channeling just get a bad rap. They get put into a position and they stay there. And that's that's a socially constructed reality. And we can't do much about that except to educate people on the fact that when they are in contemplative thought, they may hear voices other than their own.
As a witnesser of trance channeling, it's so incredible to see the transformation of someone that you know so intimately to essentially become a different person. And so now, as the scientist, I put my scientist hat on, and the question is always, is this real? What's the source? Are they really channeling a different being? From a personal perspective, witnessing it, there's no reason for my family members to be making it up, manifesting these incredibly different, well-developed personalities, one after the other. It just seems that the probability of that being faked in some way is so slim. And while I can't prove that there's other beings that are coming in, the felt sense in the moment is that this is not the normal personality of my mother or my uncle. And when we think about us being all interconnected and all one, perhaps it's just another aspect of themselves, which is part of this greater oneness.
Those who have experience with it will understand, because it's experiential. And so you will have many people say, I know what that means, because they've experienced it. And more and more and more daily are having experiences for a greater understanding.